Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
I'm super excited. Welcome to A Day in the Life, where we introduce you to the companies and the individuals who bring the magic to life. I'm Kathy Dixon.
I'm Kelly Bailey. Today we're talking with four wonderful guests from the Bezark Company. Here we have Lacey Campbell, Diana C. O'Rourke, Esty Barrier, and Baz. Welcome to A Day in the Life. We are so thrilled to have y'all on the show.
Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to hang out and talk with y'all for a little bit.
So let us dive in. How about we start with kind of your career journeys that brought you to where you're currently at now in your current roles. Lacey, how about you start?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense because I'm definitely like the newest person to themed entertainment. Yeah, I started my career as a classical actress. So, theme parks were just a natural progression out of that. I think that's kind of the way a lot of people's career journeys go. No, I started off as a performer. And then I really fell in love with spectacle work. It kind of set me on like a weird indirect path into themed entertainment. I started once I'd performed in a few sort of larger scale spectacle shows, I started designing them. I started writing them. That sort of led me into puppetry, which became sort of a niche specialty for me. And I really loved the way that entertainment felt a lot more accessible to me than the Shakespeare gigs that I was working on. And along the way, like any other performer, I had 70 bajillion rando gigs that I worked. I worked at the Oprah show for a little bit. I was a costume character at hockey games. I was a voiceover and I directed voiceover. I did training at medical schools as a fake patient. It has been a lot of roads, but the wonderful thing about themed entertainment is you kind of use everything. So it honestly, like, it all comes in handy, every little bit of it.
That is
awesome.
awesome.
I'm like looking at the image, I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so next up I think is Baz.
Yes. So kind of similar to Lacey, I started off as a performer. I wasn't a classical actor. I was more of a pretentious mime. I mean, that's not the most pretentious miming I've ever done, but that's pretty indicative of the kind of work that I did. I was like in movement theater, and I did really weird mime shows in like Brittany in France, set amongst megalithic alignments during meteor showers lit by torchlight. And I remember like at one show I saw like a shooting star come over my head. I'm like, well, I have just like peaked as a pretentious performer. So what else do I do? After that, I got into comedy. Actually, I toured the country with a sketch group for a while. That led into writing for some satire publications like The Onion, McSweeney's, and The Onion's TV shows. And a friend of mine by the name of Stephen Lawrence, who many people in the industry might know, basically like dragged me into this business. He said, hey, you'd probably be good at this. And I think the actual message was, a friend of mine is going to call you. She needs someone to help write a script for a Kung Fu movie roller coaster. Don't ask questions, just say yes. And I did. and I could not believe that someone was paying me money to do this. So I spent like 2 weeks watching kung fu movies and then writing a script for a roller coaster. And that was for the Bezark company. And they liked my work, and they asked me to come on in a more like complete way. That was about 8 years ago. And I've been with them ever since.
I'm actually going to hop back in because I neglected to mention that Baz and I met like, what, 15, 20 years ago?
Yep.
When we were both doing sketch comedy. And Stefan was also at the same festival. So we all knew each other as sketch comedians in that whole like national touring circuit first. And then, much to everyone's surprise, now
so
we're
Dark-Eyed Strangers, Animal Club, Stefan was an Elephant Larry. Just, because I'm sure the Venn diagram of themed entertainment fans and indie sketch comedy basically
it's a circle.
Yeah.
I'm like dying laughing. I'm so sorry. That is amazing. Pretentious mime. You had me at pretentious mime. I just need to throw that out there. Hilarious. All right. Gosh, Diana, would you like to share next?
I would love to. I can definitely follow up pretentious mind with a hilarious story about speech pathology degrees. I actually grew up going to Disney and Universal, and it never even occurred to me that it could be a job. Like I loved it. It was like my favorite thing in the world, but I never even thought of pursuing it. So I went to college, studied music, ended up with a speech pathology degree, decided I hated that about spring of my senior year, and just decided to move to Los Angeles. Made my way out here, got a job in TV and film, working for a small production company. Coincidentally, as a side gig, we did a lot of the Universal Studios Hollywood electronic press kits. So that was sort of like our side bread and butter. And then, did that for 3, 4, 5 years. And then was working on some independent stuff with Susan Beth Smith, who is our executive producer at Bezark now. I was her coordinator, and she turned to me one day and said, "You do well in themed entertainment." And I said, "I don't know what that means." But she said, "I'm passing your resume along. You'll probably get a call." And I went for an interview, and that was at the Hedema Group, where I worked for about 10 years. I got to work on Beyond All Boundaries at the World War II Museum, which was amazing. That was the first project I worked on ever. I worked on the High Roller in Las Vegas. I got to go to Korea a couple times. I worked on a USA pavilion for World Expo. I opened a dark ride at Lotte World in Seoul. I eventually made my way over to my Kotu and was there for a year, and then jumped back in with Susan Beth and have been at Bezark for about 3 years now. So it's been amazing. I've gotten to travel the world. I meet amazing, interesting people like pretentious mimes and hockey game characters, and it's wonderful.
That is also quite the journey. It must have been like was it really different to jump over from speech pathology to now more entertainment, and is that knowledge helpful for what it is that you do now in the development? And yeah.
Truth be told, I sort of always knew. Like, I looked around at all the people in the speech pathology major, and I was like, these are not my people. I am like the weirdo person. But let's just see this major through. But I did radio, and I performed, and I did a lot of that stuff on the side. So that performance, television, film, like production experience stuff has always been a part of me. I did acting growing up and all that stuff. So the speech pathology, not terribly handy. Like, I have a 5-year-old now, so that's helpful in language development. But beyond that, I think more the experience of college and the people I met, and people that I'm still friends with out here now. But the major itself, not so much.
Yeah, but it's about the connection of the people. This is one of those industries that everybody is connected, as we've already discovered.
I would say it's about 5 people big.
And would you like to go next, SD? Tell us a little bit about your path.
Yeah, absolutely. My path is a little shorter than everyone else's. I don't have as many fun stories and pictures, but I guess it started because I was very lucky to be able to go to Disneyland as a kid. And very early on, my mom was like asking me what I wanted to do, and I'm like, I don't know, I like going to Disneyland and like making people laugh. And she's like, well, that's a thing, Imagineering. And so as soon as I found out that that was an option, I knew that I wanted to do that, but didn't really think it was possible. And so I had like all of these other plan Bs, and then ended up studying game design and minoring in comedy writing, and kind of like stumbled upon the right people. Again, it's just like being in the right place at the right time. And I was kind of deciding between themed entertainment and TV writing, and the people in themed entertainment were just so nice. Like there was no competitiveness about it. Everybody's willing to like stick their neck out for each other. And so I just made the right contacts through school. And then kind of shortly after graduation, ended up at Bezark, and I've been here for 3 years now.
I'm just gonna hop in because a magical thing just happened. I have a degree in comedy writing too. I majored.
I never knew that.
Yeah, I have a BFA in acting, but then I added a second major like my last year, and I was like, I'm gonna make comedy writing a major. So matching,
and that's where we learned how to be funny.
It is, and now I'm doing all the time.
It's working. I've been like cracking up this whole time. Oh my gosh.
It was not a degree. Caitlin was saying, I didn't know that was a degree. Like, it's not. I definitely like cobbled it together and had to like completely sell Emerson College on it and be like, no, this is the thing. This is the thing. Trust me.
It's a thing. Sorry.
You had to do like a set.
It was an excuse to do an extended independent study of watching Buster Keaton movies. That was legitimately what it was for.
Oh my god. How is cracking me up? Okay. So money well spent. Already. Just thank y'all. So far it's a great afternoon. So like moving on from y'all's personal journeys, the company that you work for, the Bezark company, is amazing. I got a lot of like people close to my heart who work there, including Adam Bezark. Like, Baz, could you kind of go over the company overview for us a little bit and tell us about the background?
Yeah, sure. I think if anyone has been to a TEA event at any point in the last 20 years, they know Adam Bezark. He's our company's founder, and I got to look for his business card because I don't know what his title is these days. I think it's executive creative director, president, owner, operator, genius. So before the Bezark company was a company, Adam was doing projects throughout the industry. He, I think very early on, landed at Disney and sort of like made his name through Illuminations, the nighttime spectacular at Epcot that lived forever. And then he spent some time at Landmark Entertainment, like a lot of people in the industry did, doing some pretty big projects for Universal. I think T2 3D was another one of the milestones in his career. And yeah, after he left Landmark, he sort of like branched off on his own and decided to sort of formalize a company a few years back. Nowadays, like we think of ourselves as an experienced design studio and a creative leadership studio. So we're a relatively small crew of producers, writers, and creative directors, and we like to focus on the creative aspects of things, concepting and developing projects, and then seeing them through to production. We get involved in things like creative master planning. So when there's a big new development coming down the road, like we don't know how to master plan the architecture, but we know how to master plan the cool, fun stuff that goes inside it. So people bring us in to help develop that vision. And then we stick around and see it through as long as they let us. And it's really, really fun. we like to say that we work in like 4 different buckets in the industry. So we do, big attractions like Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai. We got a chance to help out with that. We'll work on entire park projects like the Ocean Park Water World in Taishuan Bay, which is opening this year. We do the spectaculars, kind of in the spirit of Illuminations, anything that's big and spectacular with fireworks and music. And we also like to work in the nonfiction space, which could be museums, it could be exhibits like the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which we got to work on, or it could be the this really awesome thing we got to do a few years ago, where we did the Halloween trick-or-treat event at the White House, which was madness and amazing. But Adam's very keen to focus on storytelling, and all of these mediums have storytelling as a core. So I think all of us know how to identify like the right story to tell and the best way to tell it. So over the years, Adam teamed up with Susan Beth Smith a while back, and the two of them sort of came up with a strategy to grow the company like slowly and steadily. And over the years, we've gathered a lot of wonderful people here at the main office and at Water Village, which is a great neighborhood, awesome food. And we also really enjoy working with all of the independent and other firms in the industry. We like to think of ourselves as sort of like casting our projects. So when a project comes through the door, we have this great network of people we worked with over the years that we can reach out to and say, oh my God, they'd be perfect artists for this, or oh, they'd be so great at doing the tech for this. And it just actually, it kind of harkens back to like, putting together a show in our old theater days. It just feels very organic and collaborative and awesome. And like I said, I've been with the company for about 8 years now, and I've seen us grow to where we're at today. And it's a really great place to be.
And to what Baz was saying, we do primarily cast roles for the project. We are small and mighty. We have a core group of creatives and project management. And the wonderful thing, in my opinion, is that creative and project management is on equal footing, right? It's equally balanced. And that makes for a good project, right? You've got your creative directors with their head in the clouds, and you've got your project managers with their feet on the ground, and they kind of tug each other somewhere in the middle. And so we like to keep that balance. We've got a good crew that listens to each other and respects each other's opinions. And let's see, I'm looking at the faces here. I mean, Baz has already talked about being lead creative director. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about what that entails on the day-to-day. Being smart and fancy.
Sure. Yeah. It's a lot of pointing. I think if you've ever seen like a picture of a creative director on LinkedIn or like an action shot from the field, it's like, this is what a creative director does. They like point at something, and sometimes they like have like a pensive face, or like are holding their chin or scratching or going like that. And then they'll switch to this side and point at that. So yeah, a lot of pointing. Being a creative director is an interesting job. I think when I got into the business, I thought that a creative director was a little more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Declarative, maybe. I think my idea of what it was when I was outside the industry was that person has this idea and then makes it happen. And I realize now that it's a far more collaborative exercise, where it's really about sort of synthesizing and putting a room together and making sure the room has the nutrients it needs to grow, and being able to recognize when someone's enthusiasm for an idea trumps your original idea, and then nurturing that and kind of like maybe a conductor is a good way to think of it.
And I'm just going to jump in too, because Adam always talks about part of the job as creative director, not only do you hold that creative vision, but you're the editor, right? I mean, it's your job to take all the ideas that are coming during a charrette. And it's, for anyone who's been a part of charrette, most of the time it's no bad ideas. And anybody can contribute, right? That's what I love, especially about the smaller companies. You all walk into a room, and it doesn't matter if you're a project manager, it doesn't matter if you're office admin, like whoever's in the room has equally respected and interesting ideas. And the fact that we all have such weird, varied backgrounds means that we're bringing ideas that the others aren't going to. And so, it's Baz's job, or whoever the creative lead is on that project, to take those ideas and sort of siphon them and direct the group to to take those ideas and edit them, really. And in fact, Lacey is also a creative director at our group, and she's in charge of creative development as well. So I don't know, Lacey, if you have anything to add to the creative director role or the creative development that you've been working on.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to be a director, right? And I think something that you both touched on that I really love is just how collaborative this industry is. And that's like totally what I loved about theater. And that's what I carry with me. I mean, working with other great people is probably like the joy of my life. And I really strongly believe that like a team that gets along together, a team that like has joy in the process, you see that in the final product. There's no question in my mind about that. I can't tell you how it translates, but it does. I also wanted to throw out, I have a friend who also says that his directing is being the host of a party. Your job is to make sure that everybody has what they need, that they're matched up with the right people, that they're having a nice time, and that everybody is able to like be in the room and sort of groove together. So I feel like that's a big part of it as well.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out. I should give credit to Matt Miller, who is a great director as well, not in the themed entertainment space, but yeah, it is going around and doing that. I love creative leadership. That is a thing that I love to geek out on and just kind of figure out what is the way that as a director, I'm stepping back. I'm maybe like able to articulate the vision, but then it's all about empowering the team and putting everybody in a space where they're able to do the best work of their lives every single time.
And I think on the producing and project management side, in my mind, that's also my job. Like if you're hearing from me too much, I'm not doing my job.
Ooh.
If things are the only time you really hear about the project management or producers, if things are going sideways, right? If things are going smoothly, my work is invisible, which is the way it should be. But I like, as on the project management and producing side, I view my job like I'm a hub, right? I help the creative people talk to the architects, talk to the technical director, talk to the graphics people, because everyone speaks a little slightly different language. And my job is to understand what all those languages are and make sure that the art directors are hearing what the architects need and vice versa. And why? Because sometimes when an architect says we can't put stairs there, our art director is going to need more information on why, right? It needs to be a conversation. And what it really needs to get down to is, it's not these stairs need to go here. It's, I want the experience to be the guest enters at this point so they see this vista, right? And then it's our job to problem solve together how we get there. So it's not this needs to happen. It's what do we want the experience to be and how can we work together? And so my job is to make all those people figure it out together as a team and not in silos. And I wanted to throw it over to Esty, who can speak. She's got to sit in a room and view all of this as a coordinator.
Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of my job is kind of just absorbing information, and like I fill in a lot of the cracks. I'm very lucky to be able to just wear a lot of different hats, and I feel like even though I'm the youngest at the company, like I'm absolutely an equal. And I get to kind of try out more producery roles or creative roles, or like I do a lot of writing, but then I also get to art direct sometimes, and just like assisting the other people on the team. And it feels very collaborative. It doesn't feel like it just feels balanced. And I think that's a good sign of a good team.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about being able to wear a lot of hats is like, I think that's actually the secret sauce for the quote unquote smaller creative studios in town. I think in a large organization, it might be easy to find yourself kind of siloed and
Yeah.
digging only into your specialty, which is great. It's great to be a specialist at something, but
Mhm.
in a smaller group, it's really nice to be able to sort of like experiment and try things out. Because I think most of us come into this industry from somewhere else. SD might be among a part of the first generation that can use this as like an actual career path where you go to college for this and then you do this. The rest of us all came in from all these weird angles, right? And being able to work in a small firm where you can try on a lot of hats, you might realize that there's a part of this business that you really dig, and then you have the opportunity to explore it further.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of small companies, and kind of like when I was initially doing my job search, I found that at a lot of the bigger companies, you would be hired for one specific role and just have to do that role. And then like there might be like you would have to just follow that path directly or like completely change course. And I've only ever worked at small companies, and I love that I get to try all of these different things. And then be open to trying something that I never would have considered and finding out maybe I love that.
Yeah, I would say like that's Diana, you brought up the creative development part of my job as well, but like that's total case in point of Adam and Susan Beth coming to me and being like, hey, would you think about trying this out? And my first reaction was like, oh God, like I don't have an MBA. I don't know business to business. I mean, I'm a capable human being, but then that role ended up, it's been a really nice way to sort of turn that into what I like to do and what I'm good at and what can serve the company, which ends up being like just a lot of talking to people and getting to know people, which again, going back to my thing of like, I just love like collaborating with other people and understanding their stories and their passions and putting them all together. Like creative development is not far from that. It's understanding what people, and I would say also organizations, like I still like, I will hold on to my nonprofit background until the day I die. Like, what is your mission? What do you want to do? What do you want to put into the world to change it in some way? And what drives you to do that work? And being able to connect to the people in the organizations that understand that and kind of figure out like where Bezark fits in, or maybe we don't fit in, but some other people should fit together and they should meet each other. That's like yet another thing that is possible being within a smaller team.
And we actually got a really good question from our viewers. And it was how to sell yourself as a wearer of several hats without confusing people that may
Okay.
want to hire you, which I think is a really great question because as you go and you apply for jobs, a lot of times you are kind of siloed at that point. And it's a way of selling yourself and how to go ahead and be able to land these fabulous roles.
Yeah, I can help answer that. Another big part of my job is, I guess it would be called like recruitment, but basically we talk to people, like most people who write in, whether they're in school or looking for a job, like we're happy to talk to them and give them advice and point them in the right direction. And I see a lot of resumes and portfolios. The ones that stick out are the ones that are focused, like they know what they're best at and they put that first, but they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. And I think bringing in a lot of your hobbies and like different interests like from your childhood even that you don't think would be applicable help. And so like I used to love baking. I used to think that I wanted to be a baker, and then I got to bake for this job for like one of our projects. I made cookies with like a secret message inside. And so it's great to have those little tricks up your sleeve and be open to learning new opportunities, but still, I mean, it takes a lot of work to articulate who you are, be clear with yourself who you are and what you're good at and what you want, and then to communicate that to other people.
It's brilliant, and I do want to say that the cookies that SD made were both they were incredible from both an experience design standpoint because the secret message was wonderful, but they were so delicious. Oh my God.
Lots
It
of
was,
practice.
they were very good. And I think just to like yes and that a little bit, you know, I got my first gig specifically because I was a writer who could write scripts. And I don't think it's unusual for a company to have a very specific need that needs to be filled. So I don't know that, getting back to Danny's question, that it's about like telling the person in the hiring process that you can wear several hats, but being able to wear several hats when those hats become an option to wear. So it's really helpful and great to have a thing that you can do well, that you can pitch and that you can lean into and show the company like, this is what I can do for you. And then once you're there and once you're working, that's when all those other hats can really be helpful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got into my first like sort of gig with the Bezarks was as a puppetry director. And puppetry direction is far from the only thing that I do, but it is a gimmick. And Danny, I would say like that is one thing that has worked for me, is when I would say like, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I come from theater. I could tell people were like, yeah. There's like a bazillion of you. But there's not a bazillion puppetry directors. So if I could come in with something that just sort of stuck in people's mind, I mean, honestly, like it's sort of marketing in a really messed up way. It's not that messed up, but.
Well, and the same, like a little bit diverting from the question, but to what Lacey said, on my resume under like interesting facts about me, I'm a fire dancer. I accidentally auditioned for Cirque Clown. And it's so I like to put weird little things like that in my resume because you stand out and then you have something to talk about when you go into an interview, right? And to be perfectly honest, you would be surprised at how often being a fire dancer has come in handy during shredding. Like
There's a lot
that
of
weird
fire
stuff
involved.
and maybe me inserting it into all the shreds, perhaps. But it is interesting. It's always a good idea to put something on your resume that makes you stand out when someone looks at it, because we look, especially SD, we look at a lot of resumes, a lot of portfolios. So what's going to make those people that are looking at them remember you?
I'm so sorry. I have so many questions now, Diana. We're gonna have to like have a separate show. It was like, yeah, the fire dancing, accidentally auditioning to be a Cirque clown. Like, yes, this is, yeah. Sorry. Oh my
I did not get a call back on the Cirque audition.
God. Lacey also auditioned.
Yeah, I'm telling Diana, like, I don't want to be that person, but I'm like, oh my God, I auditioned for Cirque too, except it was like a career highlight because I got in like in the invited ones. And then y'all, I got cut the first round. Like, if you ever do an audition, they bring in a bunch of people and they'll be like, okay, and these numbers can stay, but they'll do it with like a really, thick accent because they're amazing and they have like beautiful posture while they say it, and they read out the people who can just go ahead and leave the room, please. And I was the first number they called to leave the room.
Oh, no.
I thought I was auditioning for fire dancing, and they're like, "Oh no, this is a clown audition, but you can stay." And like everyone had their own clown nose, and they all knew each other. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll stay."
Yeah, the clown world. I'm looking at you, Baz.
Yeah, well, there was a pretentious mime there.
Oh my God.
Okay.
My brain just like went smooth. I can't even. I'm sorry. Oh my God, Kathy, do it. Yes. Oh gosh. Do y'all have any some key learnings or advice that you could share? I know Lacey has a really good one.
Yet again, I'm going to quote one of my friends. My friend Heather Gilbert is head of the lighting department at Columbia College, and her advice to all her students is: don't be a dick, bring snacks, and own your shit. And profanity aside, like I think that says it all. Like, it's a small industry. We are working too hard and our hours are too long, and we work with each other again too many times to constantly burn the people who you're around. Bring snacks is obvious. And owning your mistakes. I think that's something that I wish that I had understood earlier on. Do what you're going to do. If you mess up, anybody who is actually worth your time is going to respect you more if you step forward and say, I screwed up, I should have done this. I mean, obviously you don't want to do it all the time, but being willing to own your actions and your decisions is huge. And if you aren't able to do that, if you aren't willing to do that, the alternative is just to spend all your time in sort of creative paralysis or decision paralysis. And that is a deadly place to be as a creative or just living your life. Yeah. I mean, I've got like 8 other things that I wrote down too, but I'm going to let other people talk first.
Well,
Diana,
I
was
was going to say something that I wish I had like internalized much earlier is, back when I was doing TV film stuff, I was a coordinator and a production manager. And there was a lot of like, oh, you're organized, so you can't be creative. Like either you're creative or you're organized, and never the twain shall meet. And I really internalized that, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not creative. And so I would do that work, and then on the side, I would do the fire dancing, and I would, directing and choreographing, and I like all my creative stuff I did in my off hours, and I never valued it as much. And then I was, as I've been working in this industry, I realized like I know a lot of amazing people, 3 other people that I work with on this show right now, who do straddle that divide, right? You can be creative and be organized. You don't, and sometimes you're not. Sometimes the super creative folks are not, and sometimes the super organized are very focused on spreadsheets. But it is a range, right? It's a spectrum. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, another thing I want to mention again, that kind of timing is everything, and the people are everything, and so keep reaching out. Like it really is all about timing. I mean, most people in this industry are hiring like project based, and so they don't know when a project will come up. And if you're fresh in their mind, they're going to think like, oh, this person does concept art, like they would be perfect for this. And so keep reaching out, but like, in a considerate way. It's like maintaining relationships. And I hate the word networking, but when you think about it with more like empathy, that everybody is just a person and we all want connections, like reach out with just like something cool that you did, or an interesting article. It's friendships. It's like you want to maintain those colleagues. And I think yeah, again, it's important to be kind of considerate. Like you don't want to go too far and be like annoyingly bugging somebody over and over again. But I remember when I was applying for jobs, I literally had a spreadsheet of everybody that I talked to and when the last time I talked to them was. And it was just helpful to see, because time goes by and suddenly 6 months has gone by and you realize you haven't reached out to that person in a while.
Yeah, and I think like one of the most like common questions that I get, once people know that this is what I do for a living and that it's a possible job, they are like, oh my God, how do I break into that? And actually, I think what SD just said is that's like basically the way to do it, right? Like one of the hallmarks of our industry is that it is very small. Everybody knows everybody. And it's really driven by personal relationships and whatever the project that's in front of everybody at that moment needs. So to anyone who was wondering about, how do I specifically break in, those reach outs, incredibly important, staying on people's radar without bombarding them with daily updates, give them time to breathe, but not too much time to forget you. going back to what Lacey said, having your gimmick, knowing your special hat, and demonstrating that you can always put on other hats, and just keeping those relationships active. That's 100% the key to breaking into the industry.
Yeah, and I also want to add that I understand how hard it can be to like literally just reach out to a person, like send a cold email, and it's worth it. Like people are so willing to go out for coffee and just have like an hour long chat. It's if you're considering doing it, like you probably should.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been thinking about is like have chill but have no shame. I mean, like when I started off, I was like, I'm just gonna be a LinkedIn hussy. I'm just gonna have like absolutely no shame about following people I think are cool and reaching out and even just messaging them and be like, hi, we've never met. I really like your work. And I think like I was shocked by how many people were willing to be like, oh wow, thank you. And even like we can talk sometime if you want. There are so many emails that like I hit send on and then just like cringed out of my own skin, but it was worth it and it paid off. And thank you, ST, for nodding. I appreciate that you're like, yep.
I've been there. Yep.
Yeah, it is the work. It is the work of the thing. And I think that gets into another thing too. I think one of the things that I was slow to learn was how much the work you do behind the scenes shows. The preparation shows. It will bear out. And if you get lucky a few times because you wing it through an interview and it goes well, or you do a presentation and you just sort of like fly by the seat of your pants and somehow it works, don't let that lull you into thinking that that's your best work. It's not. You got lucky, or you might have just been swimming in a pond that was too small for you. There is so much that you can never control about an interview or a presentation, or for me coming up an audition or any of those things. What you can control is the level of preparation that you bring into the room. Control the crap out of that, and you will be armed in such a good way. Like I should have prepared that sentence better so that I had like a good button to do it, but I didn't.
I think the same applies to working in teams and on projects. Like you can tell when a team is having fun working on it.
Yes.
It pays off.
I mean, we're not curing cancer, right? If we're not having fun designing theme parks, what are we doing?
We just sit here and stare at each other. What are we doing?
Oh crap. Oh crap, what are we doing?
What are we doing? I thought we were curing cancer. Oh gosh. So now I feel like I have a whole nother outcrop of other questions. So like when you were first kind of like, I don't know that I want to go here, but I feel like we need to go here because the pandemic, I don't know if y'all are aware, is still happening. It's a whole thing. I thought it was over. I live in Florida. That's sarcasm in case anyone's just like tuning in. What
Get
are
ready
some
for the
things?
emails, Kelly. Get ready for the emails.
I know. It's not funny. I know. It's not funny at all. However, like when you transitioned, or if you've like had to work from home, like what are some ways that you have adapted, or like could you tell us about that adaptation that happened for you, maybe Baz?
Sure. I think for me, I was one of the lucky people in the pre-pandemic days where I was on the road a lot. I think I was flying to China like every 4 weeks or 5 weeks for 2 years. And fun story, I think Diana and I were both over there. Is that right, Diana? Were you with me?
Oh yeah, that's when we got rerouted through Seoul accidentally.
Right. Super fun. We flew out of China, I think, on January 22nd, 2020. And the country was literally shutting down behind us. And when I took the ferry to the Hong Kong airport, that's usually got 400 people on it, there were 6. So it was like, okay, something big might be happening. And it took a few months for things in the States to shut down, but then they did. And I went from being on a plane once a month to not leaving my house. And man, was that hard. And I will say that our company adapted very quickly, and we quickly transitioned to making sure that we had a daily scrum in the morning to kick it all off, so that we all had like a starting moment for our day while we were working from home. That helped us sort of like keep the interpersonal connection alive. And as you can see, they got kind of silly sometimes, and I don't even remember the context for this. Like, what on earth? Somebody tell me why we did this.
Well, this was
That-
Valentine's Day.
These were us and
Really?
our Valentines.
Oh, these
And
were
it
our
was just
Valentines. Oh, yeah.
whatever was closest to us on our desk.
Yeah. And like Lacey had this great idea for these Scrum morning moments where we would make these little presentations on whatever subject was dominating our minds that month. I think, we did a Black History Month one. We did a Women's History Month. We did LGBTQ month. We did like a month of like fake Theas where we just gave awards to the projects that we thought deserved Theas, and like
All of them ended up being pyramid themed for some reason.
yes, because like Lex brought in Lex Rhodes, who is at Niantic. No, is that where she is?
Niantic, yeah.
Where they are, yeah. They did a presentation on the Bass Pro Shop in Memphis, Tennessee. That's just a giant pyramid, and that was hilarious. And then Devin Flanagan did one on the MGM Luxor. And then I did one on like some random miniature golf course in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And then one by one, everyone just did presentations about things with pyramids in it.
Brian Smith did one on pyramid brewing.
Yes.
Which was like humiliating because it's in Seattle where I live. And I was like, oh my God, he scooped me. He scooped me on my local pyramid.
And these things might seem, they're definitely fun, right? Maybe they seem trivial. Man, are they not? They are so vital to keeping the connection going when we are all separated. And I'm so thankful that we had that kind of the people in the team had the impetus to do this, to mandate those morning scrums so that we started the day together, to have these wacky presentations so that we were still having fun and communicating and practicing our presentation skills. Just these little ways that we stayed connected as a company just made the transition so much easier, even though I was personally freaking the hell out because I was not on a plane. So I think that made this work. And I think we've all adapted slowly to, our current reality, new reality, however we want to phrase it this week. And, it's hard, but I think we all made the best of it.
Well, and I think in some ways, like not to say it's been amazing, but the silver lining of it all is that not only us, but us collectively as an industry have realized that it's great, and sometimes it's very important to be in the same room, having the same energy for a shred, but it's also opened up the door to, we can work with somebody who lives in Canada or Wisconsin or Connecticut, or, you know what I mean? Like it's opened up the door to who we can bring into the team, because we've proved that you can work remotely. There are ways to effectively do it. So it's really opened up not only who we can bring in, but where we can go.
Yeah. And I think we're excited to see where that keeps going. I mean, now that that's sort of like cracked the door on that, I think, and I hope a lot of companies are are really excited to keep exploring like all the benefits that come along with that, all the ways you can open up your staffing.
Yeah, I think right now that the challenge is figuring out how to do that hybrid structure where if some people are able to be in the office but others aren't, how are the people on the computer going to be heard? And it's like there's really nothing to replicate that kind of like electricity of just like being around people, being creative with people in a charrette or brainstorm. But I also think that like shows how special that is. And so like we can appreciate more when we are together and really take advantage of that time, as opposed to just like have to go to the office every day and like do the same thing every day. No, it like now it feels special. It's exciting when I go into the office.
Yeah, I'm coming down to LA next week, and I'm so excited to see my coworkers. And Julia, I'm coming to see your play. I saw Julia left a comment, so yeah. And that's how
awesome.
I that conversation. You're welcome.
If any of our viewers have any questions, like now is the time, get them in. But I think we're going to plod along because we got, four amazing people that have great experiences for us to hear from and learn from. Is there any like obstacle that you have faced in your career, and how did you come over? Or like come over it? How did you overcome it, so to speak?
I mean, I think the biggest obstacle, and it wasn't directly to my career, but I jumped into this industry in 2008. So I got this amazing job, and then like Dubai exploded, and I was like, well, that was a fun 3 months. But it's that willingness to wear a bunch of hats that kept me going, right? Like, company shrunk down to a core group of people, but I was like, hey, you need filing? I'll do filing. Hey, I'll help with accounting. Hey, like I was willing to help out any way that I could. And I think the obstacle of the industry itself imploding at that moment in time, my willingness to pitch in and just fill in the gaps wherever it was needed, was beneficial to me because I learned more than I would have if there were people taking care of all those things. But it kept me in the mix.
I would also just say, like, and this is especially for people who are looking to get into the industry, I cannot count the number of times people told me that I would never have my job. Like the number of times people told me that I would never make my living as an actor. The number of times people told me that I would never be on TV. I would never win grants. I would never get press coverage for my work. And especially, and then like when I switched industries and people were like, oh, you'll never get a job as a creative director. Like people love to tell you no. And just remember that's more about them than it is about you. And be stubborn, be persistent. And just when you hear that, I know it sucks. And it is really like, especially coming from some sources, it can really feel like a punch, but brush it off. A huge part of my like internal support system for the past 2 years is I meet once a month. I meet with a team of 3 other directors, and we sort of like mutually career coach each other and cheer each other along the way. Like find your cheering squad. Find people who can hold you up and help you see the things that you've achieved that you might lose sight of, and who can help buoy you up and who you can help pour into as well. Like that's a huge part, because yeah, it gets discouraging. And especially if you're at one of these long shot careers, again, you're gonna hear some negative stuff, but shake it off. Listen to the people who love you, who are there for you, who see you, who believe in you.
Yeah, that is really good advice. And I think it also helps combat the negative voices within ourselves. Like we all doubt ourselves, especially in a creative industry. And it's so important to have people around you who bring you up and remind you that what you're doing is good and important. It's really hard to see out of that sometimes, especially when we're disconnected, especially given the last few years. But what you're doing matters.
And what is it that you guys like about starting up a new project? You know, when you finally get, that new contract in, what is it that you enjoy most about that?
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
For me, what I love, and I actually had a relative say to me like, oh, you're a sprinter, not a marathon runner. And I was like, okay, but I like how like going from project to project to project because you get to be like a mini expert for a short period of time, right? Like I worked on a project about the ocean and I learned so much about the ocean and all of that. And then you go to a project about something else, World War II, and I learned all the stuff that I didn't pay attention to in history class. And so you just get to be an expert and actually meet with real experts, and learn things that you're not going to learn if you're an accountant at a firm somewhere. No offense to accountants.
Perfectly fine. And also, next question of like, what would you say the hardest lesson you've learned thus far? Um, oh, I saw Baz smiling. You've got an
Mm.
answer to this one, don't you?
Well, I do, and I think it might be pretty particular to me and my circumstance, but it's an interesting one, I think, to consider. Um, I came into this industry from a very like DIY place where I was used to cardboard and Sharpie and duct tape and making a thing happen, and it happens immediately, and then you move on. And man, are the timescales different in themed entertainment, right? And I don't know about you guys. How long do we start our project, and how long is it until it opens? 3 years if they're aggressive. 5, 7, 10. It takes forever for our projects to be realized. And the dirty secret is we don't really know if we nailed it until after it opens and people go and love it. And that's a long time to work on something without any kind of like external confirmation that you're on the right path. And it's been a learning process for me to sort of attune my own self-assessment skills and figure out ways to like check in on projects so that I internally can kind of like gauge where we're going and sort of like confirm, okay, this does feel good, and sort of like give myself that feedback that I need. So it's this idea that we have to rely on ourselves for feedback during these long timescale processes to keep things moving forward.
That is, oh, we have a comment from Matt Kent. Hi, Matt. Agreed. Invest in those who invest in you. So that's that was strong advice there as well. Um,
Oh yeah.
Kelly, did you have a follow-up question?
Can I just shout out because Shannon, I think that was responding to Shannon, who was saying it's all about the people you surround yourself with. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes.
In conclusion, yes.
So, question. Everyone here has a different like creative philosophy or like management, even self-management, like time management. Um, what is your individual like philosophy on that? I'm all ears. I'm looking to reassess
I'll
my
start.
own.
I guess I am constantly repeating to myself to be compassionate with myself. I think everybody needs to function with more compassion in their lives. But in terms of like the creative process, there's a lot of times where I'm kind of like forcing something, like forcing myself to write something, like whether there's a deadline, and usually when I'm actually productive is when I feel relaxed and like kind of confident in what I'm doing. And a lot of times that comes from doing something completely unrelated. So like if I'm writing, I'll like pick up the guitar and start playing, and then it'll like get the creative juices flowing. And so like be gentle with yourself. If it's not happening, like just ride the creative waves, it'll come. Um and that this happens with most, like if you're being hard on yourself with something you've made, cut yourself some slack. We're all going through a whole bunch of stuff, and you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are.
That is beautiful. I will throw in there like embrace the ugly first draft. Embrace like the ugly second and third. Like, just know progress is progress. It's going to get you there. And the sooner you knock out that idea that like anyone ever pooped out a symphony on the first try, like just get that out of your head. Like, let yourself go through the mess and trust that, like, again, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be preparation. And at the end, something beautiful will come out of it. Because if you keep consistently working on it, you're collaborating with others, you're pouring your love into it, something beautiful is going to come out.
That in itself is beautiful. And I'd like to call back something beautiful that Diana said from earlier, about how you can't be creative and organized. And I do feel, at least for me personally, you know, I used to have a lot of resistance to structure and process. And I think I made it through, you know, 20 years in entertainment, like relying on those like moments in the shower where I have a great idea. And over the years, I've learned to embrace spreadsheets and trackers and protocols. Like, it's okay to sort of like analyze your creative process and think about like practical approaches to ideation. And it doesn't make you any less creative or awesome to have a killer spreadsheet. It can be so helpful in so many ways, that there's lots of different ways to approach ideation and creativity. And organization is not at all an inhibition. It can be a great help.
Well, and I'm gonna look at it through a producer lens. Something that I struggled with early on, and finally once I embraced it, it helped me tremendously. Is that everyone is different. Every person that I'm working with is different, and how they react to comments and how they take in information is different. So typing up bullet points for notes for some person is going to be useful, but for another person, they might need you to take the artwork and actually circle it. And the moment I stopped trying to treat everybody the same and realized that everybody has a different way into it, it really changed how I interacted with everyone.
You guys are just bringing the wisdom and the truth bombs. Everybody should be taking notes, honestly. So, what about one last piece of advice or encouragement to our viewers about, you know, what it is that we do within this industry? Is there one last, you know, piece of advice that you would like to share?
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to reiterate that there truly is a place for everybody in this industry. If you want to be here, you will find your place and your people.
Snaps all around. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today on A Day in the Life. This was absolutely magical. It was absolutely amazing, which that was one of those things that Adam told me when I first started the industry was be magical. So
Ooh,
I feel like that is a fitting ending.
You are nothing but Kathy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
This was really fun.
This was amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.